right? I think that idea sort of shaped. Yeah. So the whole idea of linearity in the model, right? From procuring your raw materials to when we say value addition, I think that term itself comes from the industry function is adding value. And what is passing through the assembly line is really the product, which is work in progress. Now, an interesting question to ask in that paradigm is where is the customer exactly in that model? The customer is right
Yeah.
at the end of that assembly
Sure.
line. And
Yeah.
when we
Yeah.
spoke about customer centricity 10, 15 years ago, we weren't serious about it because structurally it was not possible to do what the customers wanted because the entire system was geared towards what is the assembly line doing, right? How can I add more value to the product? But today, when you think about digital economies, right? The thing that's going through the assembly line is not the product or the raw material, it is actually the customer.
Is it, or is it information that's gone through?
Yeah,
Because
customer's information, you could put it that way.
yeah,
Yeah. So the customer is right in the center and everything is revolving. It's like a revolving assembly line around the customer. And the thing that's surrounding the customer is actually the platform. And one of the foundational ideas here is I think many organizations speak about it. In the digital slash AI age, the only asset that you should be owning is the customer. Everything else can be commoditized. So to that extent,
hmm
I want to be able to build a platform that surrounds the customer, gives them anything that they can think of, all the options that they need, and also the realization that I can't be producing everything that they want or need. So I should be able to assemble an ecosystem and bolt them onto my platform. So that way customers are locked in. So if that is the mental model, now what does it mean internally for us? Back to your question on how do we break those silos? If the customer is right in the center and we need to surround the customer with a platform, we can't be operating with our linear assembly line model, right? Which is what it is in most traditional organizations even today. We need to have multifunctional teams that are crafted based on customer touch points. So some industries do this. For example, telecom has a customer acquisition team. They don't call it the sales team or the marketing team, named after a customer touch point, and there is ownership for the customer touch point internally. So within
yeah,
that team, you have multifunctional experts, you have sales folks, marketing folks, maybe graphic designers, you name it. So they're all there and they are just thinking about how do I make this particular customer touch point awesome? How do I acquire them? How
yeah.
do I retain them? How do I grow them? So everything is in terms of the customer journey and not really the product journey through your assembly line, right? So to that
Right.
extent, that's why customers going through and that's also a circle, not a straight line.
So let's bring this to learning for a second, because obviously what you're saying about the assembly line and batch processing, this is the model for the schooling system in most countries, where you say
Yeah.
based on your tag, which is your manufacturing date or probably your age, right? You're going to go through a certain number of steps and you're going to be effectively produced at the end as a productive individual. We're talking about corporate learning. So in corporate learning, this idea of learner centricity has been talked about for as long as I can remember in this field. And I've nearly always seen that nobody really engages with this learner. The learner's somewhere, but nobody really engages, and we say that they're somehow centric. The platform structures that we have, the idea of building content at rest, the idea of having experiences or simulations, and you mentioned what you do in your platform and how you have learning experiences that are effectively experiential or simulation based. How is that centric in terms of the learner, to use the analogy that you just used?
Yeah. Again, learner centricity was not possible earlier because even in the learning and development function, we had a linear mindset. So I'm going to put together a course, I'm going to design it, I'm going to deliver it. And where is the learner in all of this? The learner was right at the end of the line. So now learner centric system, just like customer centric systems, need to put learners right in the center of, let's say, a platform. The platform surrounds a learner and it's available whenever, wherever they need help, right? It need not just happen in the classroom, it can happen in the flow of work, as Josh Bersin would put it. So that's essentially the platform experience we need. And that platform should be intelligent enough to understand what the learner has done in the past, what
Mm.
proficiencies do they have on different skills. And to your point on skill based workplaces, that's very important. How do we even know if people are well versed on particular skills? So credentialing becomes important. So all of that, the storage layer around that becomes a platform,
hmm
and the platform is also intelligent enough to orchestrate things that I need at this point in time. And
Sure.
that's the
Yeah.
role of AI in all of this, to be honest. how do we personalize that experience, right? Most learning systems are not personalized. They are still one to many, right? Industrial. But how do
Yeah,
we
yeah.
make this many to one, right? How do we bring to bear
Mhm.
everything that we've got in the service of an individual? I think that's the change that we need in the learning
Yeah.
ecosystem. And from our perspective, what we are doing is we are big believers that, knowledge is out there, information is out there, right? You go to YouTube or Spotify or, I'm sure a lot of people take away great learning from your podcast as well. Today's sources are plenty, but all that is information, all that is knowledge. But what makes it a skill is when you're able to take that knowledge and apply it in a safe environment, like a flight simulator for a pilot, right? So they're not just exposed to content in books on aerodynamics and they're not asked to fly a plane the next day. Thankfully, that doesn't happen. They have to spend maybe 10,000 hours flying a plane in a simulated environment. That's when they are allowed to even, become a co-pilot maybe, right? And then eventually fly a plane. If that's a rigor that's expected out of doctors and pilots and, jobs that are high stakes, think about what all of us go through. How did we end up here? Is through a lot
Mm.
of trial and error. We were not given safe environments to explore and apply our knowledge in a workplace like context. So that's the big breakthrough that we are bringing to the table at Nonscape.
Okay, so we have the concepts, multiple concepts in there, which maybe we'll drill into in a separate session. But the multiple concepts around things like experiential learning, things like simulation based learning, how they lead to potential skills that can be measured, but also the concept of proficiency. So, how you get better over time if you repeat the actions that you're doing in the application of the things that you know. So, that's the application of knowledge leads to skills, and then you have experience in the workplace, most likely that leads to proficiency and yeah, things like that. So these concepts are probably fairly familiar to the learning and development industry. The L, the limitless digitization, which is where we're going as we start to talk about the technology landscape. So we have digitization and we have the potential for that to be limitless in the context of what you're saying, with the learner at the center. So the learner is able to, based on a trigger, so I need a particular thing, and I'm going to therefore go and find out what I need to know. Everything is available at my fingertips, and that's the ideal solution. But that's not really what we're saying, because I think what we're saying is that might be an ideal solution for the acquisition of information,
Yeah.
but then we need to practice that.
Yeah.
And if we think about the context of your platform, but also the rest of the AI ecosystem that we probably will have available to us over the next couple of years, we have the ability to go and find things out. We have the ability to have those things summarized, digested, and somehow made relevant to what we do. And then the ability to practice that. Now, the ability to practice that, so far as I understand so far, we're still talking about content at rest. We're talking about the development of a simulation where you can go and practice some things, which has been validated by some experts and somehow gives the task structure, gives the procedural knowledge, gives the practice capability that an organization needs, endorses, sanctions, etc. How do we move that content at rest piece, that simulation at rest, away from being at rest? How do we move it towards something that is dynamic and adaptive? Bearing in mind, we might not have all of the data that we need to actually personalize something. So we talk about customization and personalization ever so slightly differently depending on
Yeah.
how much data you have. So how do we move the needle when it comes to simulations being something that we create versus something that could be dynamic?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So just for context for your audience, L is limitless digitization, right? So that's a line between the physical, digital, and the biological that's blurring. So the first
Mhm.
one, boundaryless organization, was the organizational boundary blurring. Here, the physical, digital, and the biological is blurring. Now, if you apply this to the workplace, obviously we see this today. Physical and digital we sort of get because everything is digital these days, right? I'm mindfully adding biological to this because over time, I think that's what's going to happen. Where some part of, companies are already understanding this about neuroplasticity and how we learn better, right, through better neuroscience principles. So I think at some point in time, learning will use the biological angle to this as well to truly personalize learning. Now, how are we converting this experience at rest into a dynamic experience is where AI comes in. So a couple of years ago, we introduced a platform called Genie. So back then, GenAI was just in its fledgling state. We named the platform Genie. Later on, we retrofitted the word generative into it, not as a marketing gimmick, but truly that's what it is doing today. So it is a generative immersive experience creator, Gen IE. So Genie. So what we're able to do is, just like you go to Chat GPT and you prompt for different things and it gives you information and insights. So on Genie, you are able to prompt for different experiences. So for example, if you want to create a difficult conversation between a manager and a direct report in the retail industry, and this is a performance conversation, you are able to give Genie that prompt. And we've got a large library of simulations that are built already. And that's the moat that we have in all of this. But a layer of a builder attached to this large library. So we are able to very quickly, in a matter of minutes, create a dynamic experience in the context of the organization for the topic that you're looking for and for the audience that you're looking for as well. So that's from an organization standpoint, how you're able to rapidly deploy some of these things. From a learner standpoint, when you go through the simulation, it's a conversational experience. Back in the day, we used to have pretty static experiences. You click on this button or you select this option. All of that has become adaptive and real time and conversational. So some of the avatars that you are speaking to in the simulation today, they are unscripted. So they are trained on certain models and certain personalities. And after that, they start giving you real time experiences and they're learning from your reaction to different situations and they are flexing their styles accordingly. So that's how we make it a dynamic experience, both for the L&D teams and the organizations and for the learner. And in all of this, the beauty is because this system is all about learning by doing, as opposed to learning passively, watching a video or going through an e-learning concept online. We all know how ineffective that can be. But here, it's an active system. You're learning by doing. If you're disengaged, we will know that, right? So if the person is not making the right moves, all of the clicks and the conversations that you have, they're all processed by AI instantaneously. It starts giving you feedback in context, and some of this data goes into your personalized report. So we speak about personalization and learning based on the unique gameplay that you've had. The report start giving you a personalized story on the red, amber, green on multiple competencies and skills and proficiency you've demonstrated. And at an aggregate level, anonymous aggregate level, this data also can go back to the organization saying if you've got 5,000 people, you're trying to train them on, let's say, trust building as a skill. Here is where your people are. Here is the red, amber, green, right? So that's super value add for organizations.